Hi, Olivia and Alex. I hope you guys are feeling a tiny bit better today, and I hope you guys feel even better tomorrow so that you can hopefully come for the last day of school of the week. But if not, hopefully you'll get better over the 3-day weekend. But I wanted to give you guys a video of kind of what we've been going over in class so that you guys understand the homework assignments in case you want to get them done before Tuesday when we come back to school. So you guys had a worksheet that I had given you. I think, Alex, it was the day before you left, and Olivia, I think you already finished it, about fractions, percentages, and decimals. And so I am going to go over our practice 6.1, which is the homework, and it's on page 188. So I'll go over the first one in each section for you. So this section and then this one and this one, just so that you guys know how to do each one. And hopefully if you have any other questions, you can get to me and maybe I can come in early Tuesday morning as long as you let me know you'll be here to help you with them. So each one, real quick before I go over this, fractions, decimals, and percentages all go back and forth between each other. So we had talked a little bit about in our guided practices, which are on the other page, about different ways you can go back and forth. So I'm going to just quickly write down a couple problems that maybe would help you with those. The first thing is a fraction. If I have a fraction, let's say 2/8, sorry, my computer and paper aren't matching up. 2/8, how could I turn that into a decimal or a percentage? And it's actually pretty easy because remember, a fraction is just a division problem. And remember, the top dog always goes in the house. So in order to turn this into a decimal and eventually a percentage, I would just divide. And remember, the top dog always goes in the house. So I would put my number 2 in the box, and 8, well, 8 can't go into 2, so remember our rule for dividing is if it can't go into that, I mark the area I start adding zeros with my decimal and I add a 0. And then if I go ahead and just bring this up right now, bring my decimal up, I can actually kind of ignore it and just look at this as 8 goes into 20, and 8 goes into 22 times. 2 times 8 is 18, and my remainder is 2. And if you remember, when we're dividing with decimals, we cannot have a remainder and be done with the problem. We have to keep going. So then I'm going to add another 0 and bring it down for 20 again. And it's going to be up here. Remember, we had 20. So essentially what it's going to do is say, okay, well, then 8 goes into 20 again, and 2. And I just picked this randomly. It may not have been the best one because it's just going to keep repeating. So essentially, once you get 2 places here, you can just assume it's going to repeat and we can round up. So this is just going to keep being 20. I bring down another 0, 0, and it'll keep going 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So what we want to do is just say, okay, I just need 2 places to make it a percentage, because remember, per means for each, and, sorry, it's hard to write on the opening of my book, and cent, remember in Latin, century, and there's 100 cents in a dollar. Cent means 100. So this means for each 100 is what percent means. So all we need to do is have numbers in the hundredths place here. Remember, when we're dealing with decimals, the hundredths place, this is the tenths place, and this is the hundredths right next to it. So I would only need 2 places for it to be a percent, to be over 100. So then I could write, if I round up, 2 doesn't actually round the next 2 up to anything, so it would just stay at 22. And that is my decimal. Normally you won't have repeating numbers. I just picked this out of random, and so it wasn't probably the best fraction, but all of your book has great fractions that probably won't repeat. So you won't usually have to do that step. So it's 0.22, and we learned, I think Olivia was here, but Alex wasn't. Whenever you're dealing with from a decimal to a percent, you go to the right. So if you're turning a decimal to a percent, percents you need to move it 2 places to the right. If I had a percent, if I moved this 2 places to the right and it became 22%, and I wanted to turn it back to a decimal, I would move 2 places to the left. So then it would go back to 22. So essentially, if you have a fraction, you just do divide. Top dog goes in the house. You divide, and it will obviously be a decimal usually, because you'll have a smaller number on the numerator side, the top, that will go in your house. So then it will turn it automatically into a decimal, and you can either leave it as a decimal if it says fractions into decimals, or you can move 2 places to the right and turn it into a percent from there. So anything from a fraction, turn into a decimal first, then a percentage. Anything from a decimal, you can turn it into a percentage by just moving it. If you need to turn it into a fraction, if we had 0.22 and I needed to turn it into a fraction, well, what place did we decide this number is in? The very last number is in the hundredths place. So I can just put it over 100. That's my decimal, is 22, or my fraction, sorry, over 100. Then how could I change that into a percent? Well, any percent, because this whole symbol means per 100, then that would just mean, oh, it's already over 100, so it would be 22%. So that is how I would take it from a decimal to a fraction, or a decimal to a percent. Then if I had a percent, and I'm trying to take that and turn it into a fraction, it's the same thing. Anytime you have a percent, it just means whatever number is the percent, in this case 22, I put it over 100 because that's what this whole symbol means, per 100. So now it's a fraction. The only thing you need to remember is sometimes your book is going to tell you to simplify. So then I would need to take this and actually reduce it or simplify it. So I'm hoping that helps. If not, maybe rewind and go over it again. But this is kind of all the stuff that we talked about. Every single time you have a fraction, it's just a division problem. So that is how you're going to turn it into a decimal and then to a percentage, or if it says fraction to decimal, just leave it as a decimal. So I will do the very first one in each of these with you. So number 1, let's do number 1 on our practice 6.1 on page 88. It says out of 500 flowers. So first thing we need to do is write a fraction out of our word problem. It may confuse you because you're like, oh, this is a word problem. I don't know how to do that. Just turn it into a fraction. And every time we have a fraction, the whole amount or the total amount goes on the bottom of our fraction. The parts that it's asking us about, or the parts that aren't whole, goes on the top. So out of 500 flowers, oh, that's the whole amount. That's the total. I can write that on the bottom. 65 are roses. Oh, that's the part they're giving me. So I write that on top. What percent of the flowers are roses? Oh, so I need to take this fraction and turn it into a percent? Great! It's a division problem. So I just divide. Top dog goes in the house. So I go 65, in this house, over 500. Or I mean 500 into 65. 500 doesn't go into 65. So I need to start my decimal point here to show I'm adding zeros. 500 does go into, if I bring my decimal up, I won't have to worry about it anymore, and I can look at it as 650. So I go 500 goes into 650 one time, do my multiplication and subtraction. It leaves me with 150. 500 can't go into 150. So I add another 0 and bring it down. That would give me 1,500. And 500 goes into 1,500 3 times. So it's going to do my multiplication, then my subtraction. I can stop now because I don't have a remainder. So I'm going to go 13 is my number, but that's a decimal, 0.13 or 0.13. So remember, if it's a percentage,